All right, good morning. Pardon my tripod here. I've been recording a tabletop football game, solitaire football game for my other channel. But I want to talk about campaigning. You know, what is campaigning in old school? Again, I talk about old D20, traditional D20 games that adhere to that 1974 through 1980 85. So D&D Basic, Holmes, AD&D 1 kind of idea. So when I talk about campaigning, in this video, it's in reference to that versus, say, other campaigning, in particularly fifth edition, Pathfinder, fourth edition, et cetera, et cetera. Dragon Age, Modern Age, right? Okay. So I think it's something that we don't talk about enough, and I think we really should. And we should define campaigning, in my opinion, this way. And I'll try to also give some examples of things, right? So campaigning to me in old school is not about your party of characters. It's about the thing we are all engaged in. Okay, so I'll give an example: Greyhawk, Blackmore, Joff with what we're doing in OSC, my Broadlands, my Island of Sewell, and I'm sure there are many, many others. The famous one that has its own language is Tela. I can't remember the name of it now. It starts with a T. I mean that is probably the most used and most famous is Tela. I cannot remember the name of it. Anyway, there's languages in that. But what we don't talk about when we talk about campaigning in D&D Basic, Expert, or AD&D, etc., what we don't actually mean is you're going to make a character, Joe the Bard, and you're going to make an elf, and Bill's going to make a magic user, and Steve's going to make this fighter, and William is, Robert is going to make a thief. And that little group of characters from the beginning, level one, are going to be in the campaign from beginning to end. It's an absolute no. That is the first mistake players make. And I think even back in the day when we were kids, you think you're making a character that you're going to play, forever, so to speak. And well, you find out very, very quickly, oh, no. Yeah, I'm the player. I'm going to have a lot of characters in these campaigns. And I think this is huge because whether D&D says it or not, the new D&D, whether fifth edition says it or not, whether fourth edition said it or not, whether Pathfinder says it or not, many of these games, it is assumed you are making a protagonist. You're making something that you are going to play through this module, this Kingslayer series of campaigns, this book by TSR for fifth edition called Strahd, right, called Ravenloft, right? And your little group that gets together every Tuesday nights are going to see these characters all together, go through everything until you wrap it up. And that is just absolutely opposite of what campaigning means with the old school. That's not to say you won't have characters survive and grow, etc. So knowing this, right? Knowing this, well, what are you doing in Greyhawk? Well, that's just it. You're campaigning in Greyhawk as a group of players with characters. Hopefully some achieve, some don't, etc. But it's Greyhawk, right, that you're experiencing. It's Blackmore. It's Joff. It's Broadland, right? The one I've been running locally here for 8 years, right? It's this world in which there's going to be lots of different characters come and go, right? I mean, we've had players locally. Brian very often gets bored with a character if it doesn't die, and he'll literally put it in his folder and he'll start a new character because he just wants to do something else. So that's also not unheard of, to have a folder of characters that exist in the world that aren't dead, and you just want to play a particular character at a time. So what does this mean? Right? What does this mean? Well, it means you're going to have characters at different levels, right? You might have a 7th level fighter who's with 2 first level characters and maybe a 3rd level character in there. And I'm okay with that. I am completely okay with that, because that is real life, right? When I sit at a group of guys my age, right, we all come with a plethora of experience in this hobby, unless he happens to be new to the hobby and he's only been playing 5 years, right? So we're not all equal, right? We all Some of us just have 40 years of experience or 28 or whatever we have. Some have 10, some have 5. And the reality is that's life, right? You know, if you're meeting with car collectors, there's some guys that have been collecting and restoring cars for decades, and there's other guys that have just gotten into the hobby of collecting and restoring old cars. And it's just the way it is, right? So why should your party be any different, right? It shouldn't, in my opinion, right? But you're going to have to recognize there are limitations there, right? Okay. However, there are great homebrew tweaks around this. I have never done this. I have used Sword and Wizardry Continual Light for many, many reasons, because they level up per adventure, right? They level up as they get a number of adventures under their belt. And I would count any adventure as a session. If they adhered to a session, that counted whether they completed the adventure or not. So Sword and Wizardry was Continual Light was a nice way for guys to level up based on the number of sessions we had. And then you would see a first level character catch up a little quicker, right? Okay, because they didn't have to just kill things or collect treasure. But that was Sword and Wizardry Continual Light. When I run fantastic middle age adventure game, which is what I ran that in Basic Fantasy the most, it was experience based, and I wasn't gonna fudge, right? If they wanted to start over with first levels, then go ahead. But if Steve had a 7th level character, they could join Steve on an adventure, or Steve could set that aside. And by the way, they never got that high, right? I want to make this clear right now. In 16, 12 years, none of these guys got to 7th level. So it was never, ironically, never became a problem. So, but my point is, you could, but you could easily put that character away, waiting for there to be characters who catch up, and then we can go on adventures at a higher level. But I want to point out, so Todd does something that I really appreciate. Our characters are earning experience as they do the thing, but we as players earn experience in a bank per session we attend. So we are rewarded, right, for attending sessions, and those add up. So let's say the other night people go, geez, Jason's had this, like the third character Jason's had die in 3 sessions. But I have a bank of XP that if I want to, I can make whatever that bank is, I can take that and make a 3rd level thief. Bam, I've got a 3rd level thief. Now I haven't been. I've been making 1st level characters and folding them back in, because none of us are high enough yet, right? I think Lauren might be at 3. I think George is at 1 or 2, right? Trotter, I think, is at level 3. So that would be where I would want to slide in. I might want to take my 2,700 experience and make a 3rd level thief or something if I was going to join them in an adventure. My point is this: our characters are collecting XP, and they're going to go on their own scale. But we as players, for attending sessions, get XP. That XP is banked. And that way, when our characters die, we have a bank of XP that we can count on, right? So I could not touch that bank and over 15 sessions be, whatever, 20 to 30 sessions, have that bank way up there. And then I can make a character that fits in with the party. So if we all got to, we were roughly 5th level characters, it would be harder for my 1 level to be a positive influence on the group, right? So that's where I'd want to take that bank and make a 3rd level or 4th level character to fit in, right? But I think this is important. Campaigning really meant something different in the beginning. First of all, we would do modules, and those modules, you would try with that levels 1 to 3 module right there. You'd have hopefully enough guys to, on average, we had 3 guys as a kid. Jeff, Paul, Scott, Jeff, Ron, and Scott, right? So we generally had about 3 players plus me running games. We rarely had a full house. So heck, I only had 6 or 7 really close friends. Not all of them played role playing or weren't available, right? But the point is, you would get a module out, and I would throw the guts out and make my own dungeon descriptions. But the reality is, they would go into that, and that, in a way, session after session, depending on what was happening, would become the campaign. We could stretch a module out like a mega dungeon, in a way that exploration of that dungeon was a campaign, because we came back to it, back to it, back to it, back to it. So there was no idea that there was an arc, right? There was some story arc. We're going to go from 12 AD, and they're going to campaign to 15 AD, 3 years in the world, and we're going to see an arc of world power or something. Those things just aren't necessarily paramount to me. So it strikes me, campaigning with these old games really is about the thing you're doing. It's about the world you're engaged. It's about the setting that you're engaging in. Are we doing a Conan-esque world and there's Conan-esque adventurers? Are we doing Greyhawk? Are we doing Blackmore? Are we doing Joth? And there's going to be lots of characters come and go. Lots of characters live and die. Lots of some characters retire. You know, Dell's retired a couple of characters in Joth, and not because they got to level 9, but because they achieved enough financially to say, why would I go out there and risk my life anymore? I'm done. And he retires them. It makes complete sense. Not every adventurer is going to be, is going to go to level 9. And this is part of the campaign. So he's got characters retired in our little city. They are now NPCs, and we have an understanding of them. So Ignatius used to be out there, adventuring. Once he got enough, he invested in a tavern, and now he's a barkeep, right? But he's now part of our campaign world as an NPC, and there's life there, right? Your character lives on. Arig, I've got the 17-year-old Arig who I still want to play, but I've been tempted. I've sold my farm to Trotter, one of Dell's characters. So we finally recouped my family's farm. I turned around and sold it to Trotter, Dell's character. He's semi-retired Trotter as a business mogul. And I've got Arig sitting in the wings. What do I do with this 17-year-old kid who's now sold his farm? I mean, he now knows adventure. He's not going to farm, right? He has no family left, etc. So if I retire him, what happens to him? Well, he would just vanish into obscurity. So I'll keep playing Arig, right? Because Arig, it would be now 18 and have money in his pocket and can adventure, right? So this becomes part of the overall campaigns. And again, I compare this to, I think, what people expect when they sit down in D&D. They're making a protagonist. They're gonna get to know this thing, and they're gonna bond with this character, and it's gonna be their character for 15, 24, 42 sessions, right? And I think that is, it's not real wise to even think that in D&D 5th edition. I mean, if you're playing a legitimately challenging D&D, those characters aren't guaranteed to survive either. But I think balance, the fact that a game has a CR rating and balance suggestions tells you, again, you want to kind of wheel these characters along and keep them alive and help them become alter egos to the players at the table, right? I want to express my fantasy, right, through these characters, as opposed to experiencing the game, right, and the intention of the game with your party, with your group, right? And I know this to be a fact because, again, one of my favorite games when I came back and was looking for something modern that wasn't old school, and I hated 4th edition, and I didn't like Pathfinder, and I discovered the age system, and I discovered Dragon Age, and mouth agape when I read in plain English, these characters are meant to survive. They are going to see an arc in a campaign. They're going to go from level 1 to level 10 or level 1 to level 20, whatever there was. And it basically tells you that every session should challenge them enough that they would level up after every session. So if we're going to level 10, in 10 sessions, they should get to level 10. Dragon Age had the audacity to actually tell you, be fair, and remember, these characters are going to be heroes. And I actually appreciated that, right? Instead of feigning some deference to fantasy gaming, they actually said, no, this is meant to be a different experience. And they flat tell you that as a GM. They warn you this is what you're trying to do for the players. And I'd rather have them be honest about it. And I'd rather have me understand why we're doing this thing. What is the role play here? What is the story here? What is the challenge here? Than to not say it, but it's by session 4, it's obvious to everybody but the GM, right? What's ultimately trying to happen here, right? So this is something that, again, the fact that it is not implied anywhere in the original D20 games that you are playing a character infinitely, that it is lethal, that you roll your hit points, that if you do the math and I roll up 2 hit points, most likely this character is not long for the world. And it's best you recognize, right, what that means. But it also does not mean there's no such thing as campaigning. We're campaigning in the world, right? We're campaigning in the setting. And you're going to have multiple characters from your folder come in, they're going to die. You're going to have some be really successful. Some are going to be boring. Some are going to be failures. Some are going to die. Some are going to live, right? And in and out. We used to have a tavern. We used to have a guild. Jeff had a folder with characters that were dead or alive, right? And they had a guild, and we try to start from the guild, and they could pick the character they wanted to take. If we weren't already in like a dungeon where they were, every time we reconvened, Jeff had that character in a dungeon. But and it was campaigning by the sheer fact that we adhered to getting together weekly or daily, or if it was in the summer, we might play 3 days in a row, right? Summer mornings or summer evenings or something. Bang, 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 and you just kept playing. And if a character died, you rolled up another one and you just kept playing. That was campaigning. But there's a big difference. They weren't character campaigns where we were trying to adhere to a story arc or adhere to a troublesome evil villain in the world. This was not Lord of the Rings and there's a timeline, etc. We were people playing a game. We were players campaigning, not characters campaigning. And if you were fortunate enough, like I said, I think Ron had a dwarf in all of our time. Ron finally had a dwarf at level 9. Jeff may have had a level 7 elf or something at some point. I can't remember, but Ron, I know for a fact, Ron lived with me for a time, and you don't forget that character that was in almost every session, and that character that stayed alive. And early on in their first adventures, they found a hammer, a magical hammer that really aided Ron's survivability, and it really made Ron's dwarf that much better in combat. And then eventually, once they got plate mail and eventually got magic armor, etc., Ron's dwarf became something he could kind of count on. And you don't forget a guy who gets to level 9, right? And I think he named him after Gimli. I want to say it was Gimli. It was one of the dwarves from Hobbit. He named his dwarf after. It wasn't Gimli, I don't think, but it was one of the 9 or 13 dwarves from the Hobbit. He named that dwarf after. But the point is, so you don't forget that one player in all the years we played, that one character that got to level 9, right? So anyway, I want to talk about this because campaigning with the OSR old school D20S style of game does not mean what you think it does. And it's completely different than what you're watching in, say, Critical Role or Dragon Age sessions or One Ring sessions, right? One Ring there is a particular idea that you're making a character, and I mean, One Ring even tells you you shouldn't be fighting. If you're fighting, you're missing the point of the One Ring, right? Game system. So they even warned you that you're going to fight, but it should be rare and it should be dangerous and epic, right? Simba Room implies you're going to players have are always a step better than the enemy, right? And Simba Room's you're going to see characters live, and that's fine. I mean, I have nothing wrong with enjoying David's character, my character, and Dell's character, and Tom's character, Todd's character over 13 or 14 sessions. So when, unfortunately, somebody dies, like you know, Todd's character did in session 14, it was epic, and he died as a result of an epic world-eating worm devouring the city. So he didn't just die at the hands of bandits. He died, he died in an epic world-changing event, which was satisfying for all of us, I think. I mean, not that he died, but that if he's gonna die, this was pretty dangerous, pretty epic. Anyway, I want to share that because campaigning in the OSR, in old D20, in Holmes, in basic D&D expert, in AD&D, campaigning, you were committed to playing in a group, in a setting for a long time, whether you had 10 characters exist in that period or 3 characters exist in that period. I'm sure there may be AD&D guys that will tell you, no, our intent was always to survive and keep our characters going. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying to play a session in which you keep your characters alive. And there's nothing wrong, I suppose, with GMs or DMs saying, well, yeah, I'm aware we're going to keep this moderately challenging, or fudging rolls, which I never do. I mean, Todd never does. I mean, we see the dice drop, we accept it, and I think we all accept it because it's about dice. It's not about vendettas. It's not about Todd wanting to eliminate a character or whatever, right? It's literally, we just play the game, and the results become the results of the story. So I thought I would talk about this because the word campaign is not the same for every role-playing game. Not even close, right? So that's why I refer to Chronicles with something like Dark Age of Man, because Chronicles are about characters, right? They're the Chronicles of Conan's adventures. They're not Hyborian adventures, right? Hyborian adventures would imply lots of different characters coming and going, and we were experiencing the world of Hyboria through many different characters in those short stories. No, we're following one man, Conan, and experiencing Hyboria through one hero and his friends, right, or his allies. That's Chronicles to me, right? So I would play D&D 5th edition as Chronicle gaming, right? We know your characters are for the most part going to be heroes. They're mostly going to survive. So let's make these Chronicle sessions. Dragon Age, same thing. I wouldn't even worry about a campaign arc. I would just play Chronicles. Hey, let's go visit what you guys are doing. Symbaroum is a great example. We really were having Chronicle play, but the sessions were attached, right? We were rotating GMs. So rotating GMs creates Chronicle play, because the fact that Dell can't be his character in every session tells me we're in Chronicles, because there's going to be sessions where Dell's character is not available. He's running the session. That's Chronicle play, right? Because not all the heroes are there, right? And our heroes generally are going to survive. So they become Chronicles versus campaigns, right? Campaigns are Greyhawk, right? Campaigns are Joth. Campaigns are Broadlands, Island of Sul. Tekka, I cannot remember the name. You guys know. You guys know the epic long-term West marches. Again, it has its own languages and everything. Those things have been going for years. I mean, there are people who've been playing it. I want to say Tekamundo or Techamache or something. Forgive me, but that's what I mean, right? Those are epic long-term extending player campaigns where characters come and go. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.